Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're joining us today. We've got another bonus chapter today, a short story about Ulrich, one of the NPCs that the group has heard about quite a bit so far, but not yet gone to meet. This will be a story from a bit earlier in his career and one of the major events that shaped him into the person that the players will be meeting when they eventually decide to follow that thread. Like, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Please comment below if there's anything you'd like to see, and enjoy.
Titan was a city of many faces. By day, it was a marvel of steel and magic, a place where alchemists and artificers bartered alongside dockhands and merchants. It was the beating heart of trade, where steam-powered carriages rattled down stone-paved roads, and towering spires shimmered with arcane light. But when the sun dipped beyond the jagged coastline, Titan became something else entirely, a city of whispers, where shadows lengthened, and the hungry devoured the desperate. And in those shadows, people were disappearing. Sergeant Alaric Thornshield had seen crime before, thieves, brawlers, extortionists. But this was different. It started with a body, a nameless dock worker found floating in the harbor, throat slit, wrists bound. A brand, burned into his forearm, marked him as property, and property meant slavery. Slavery in Titan was more than a crime, it was an abomination. No one spoke of it, but in the city's darkest corners, it existed. Those who found themselves without coin, family, or power were the easiest to take. A debt owed became a debt collected in the form of flesh. Runaways, vagabonds, the forgotten. And now, it was happening right under the Watch's nose. It took Alaric 3 weeks to piece together the threads. A ledger found in a dockmaster's office, half burned. A terrified witness. A dockhand who had seen a black wagon ferrying men and women into a warehouse near Blackwell Dock, only to emerge empty. A list of coded names, traced back to a powerful and dangerous figure, Ambassador Drenvik Marove of Alum. Alum, the city that outlawed magic, the city that executed mages in its town square, the city that claimed moral superiority over the rest of the Steel Cities. Alaric stared at the name on the parchment in his hands, jaw tightening. A diplomat. This wasn't some gang of cutthroats or a desperate merchant trying to make quick coin. This was a man protected by the highest offices of 2 cities, a man whose mere accusation could set off a diplomatic firestorm, and yet he was going to bring him down, even if it meant breaking every order he had ever received. Pull back. The words came from Captain Valan Dorn, Alaric's superior, and a man who had never seen a problem that couldn't be solved with diplomacy. You don't have the clearance to investigate an ambassador. Alaric stood stiff-backed in the captain's office, fists clenched behind his back. Sir, I have 4 missing people, all workers from the market ward, last seen near Blackwell Dock. 2 more bodies turned up in the harbor yesterday. This is not a coincidence. Captain Dorn sighed, rubbing his temples. Alaric, there are political realities here. Accusing an ambassador, an alum ambassador no less, is more than just an arrest. It's a potential diplomatic crisis. Alaric's jaw tightened. He had seen what happened to trafficked people. The ones who ended up in shallow graves were the lucky ones. The unlucky ones? Sold. Used. Forgotten. His voice was steel. And how many more people have to disappear before it's worth a crisis? The captain shook his head. I like you, Thornshield. You've got fire, and you've got a future. But this, if you push forward, you're going to make some very dangerous enemies. And no one, not even the Watch, will protect you. Alaric nodded, and then against orders he went back to work. It was always the docks. Alaric crouched in the shadows near Blackwell Dock, watching a black wagon roll up to a reinforced warehouse. The driver, a broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his cheek, hopped down and unlocked the carriage doors. 10 captives stumbled out, hands bound, eyes wide with terror. A second set of doors opened, and 2 alum enforcers stepped forward, clad in their city's signature steel-gray armor. Alaric exhaled slowly. He didn't have an army, he didn't have backup, but he had conviction. And a plan. He moved like a shadow, slipping behind a stack of shipping crates as the enforcers dragged the captives toward the warehouse. From his belt he pulled a small vial, alchemy powder mixed with magnesium dust. He struck it against his gauntlet, and a bright flash erupted, blinding the guards. Then he moved. One enforcer turned, eyes barely recovering before Alaric drove a knee into his gut, then grabbed him by the collar and slammed his helmeted head into a nearby crate. The second guard lunged, drawing a short sword. Alaric dodged the first swing, caught the second with his vambrace, and twisted the blade from the man's hand before slamming an elbow into his jaw. The driver was already reaching for a crossbow. Alaric dove as the bolt flew past his ear, rolling behind another crate. He grabbed a rusted crowbar from the ground and hurled it, striking the driver's wrist. The man howled, dropping his weapon. And then came more footsteps. From inside the warehouse, 4 more enforcers emerged, weapons drawn. Too many. Alaric had seconds before they cut him down. He grabbed the nearest enforcer's fallen blade and threw it like a spear, catching one man in the shoulder. The others rushed forward. Alaric parried, twisting between them, dodging one slash, countering another. A blade caught his side, slicing through his leather armor, sending a hot flash of pain up his ribs. No time for pain. He ducked, spun, drove his boot into an attacker's knee, heard the sickening crack of bone, then used the momentum to hurl another man into the dock's murky water. The driver was running. Alaric was faster. He tackled him to the ground, gripping the man's collar. "Who's paying you?" he growled. The driver spat blood. "You're already dead, watchman." Alaric slammed his fist into his jaw. "Who paid you?" The man coughed, laughing through the pain. Drenvik Marrow. It was the only proof he needed. Days later, the Watch stormed the Alum embassy. Marrowy fell. His city abandoned him. His title was stripped, and in the end, Alaric had done the impossible. Years later, when Alaric Thornshield finally wore the badge of Captain of the Watch, he would look back on this night, this decision, and know this was the moment he became who he was meant to be, a protector, a thorn in the side of corruption, and he would never turn back.